Hello to you, whoever you are searching, for a quiet pause in the rush of everyday life. Right now, give yourself permission to sit down or lie down and get truly comfortable. Take a deep breath in, hold it for just a moment, and then let it out slowly. Let the tension resting on your shoulders soften. Let the worries tightening your brows slowly release. Today, we're not going to talk about dry doctrines. We're not going to talk about long lists of things you should be doing. Today, we're going to talk about rest. But not the rushed kind of rest you squeeze into a short break. We're talking about a deep rest, a kind of rest your soul has been longing for, perhaps for a very long time. You see, we live in a world that glorifies busyness, a world that whispers, if you stop, you'll fall behind. We've been conditioned to feel guilty for doing nothing at all. Even on our days off, our minds keep racing, planning, worrying, rehearsing tomorrow. But the story I'm about to share with you, a story that took place more than 2,000 years ago in a wheat field in Judea, offers a very different perspective. It begins with a painful paradox, one you may recognize in your own life. A moment when human beings are allowed to rest by the rules, but are not allowed to live honestly with their own weakness. So come with me. Let's turn back time. Let's walk together on that dusty road and rediscover what it truly means to be human. A gift that became distorted. Let's begin with the word Sabbath. In ancient Hebrew, Sabbath means to stop, to rest. It is a beautiful idea, one that was revolutionary in human history. In the ancient world, slaves had no days off. Machines have no days off. But God the Creator set apart a special day, the seventh day, so that human beings, whether master or servant, could stop. That day was born as a gift, a day to remember that we are not production machines, that we are children of God, that we have worth even when we are not producing anything of material value. It was a day to breathe, to look at the world, and to remember that everything is good. But sadly, what did human beings, driven by fear and the desire for control, do with that gift? Over centuries, religious leaders built fences around the Sabbath. What began as a day of freedom slowly became a day of confinement. They created hundreds of suffocating rules, down to the smallest details. How many steps you could walk? You must not light a fire. You must not carry a burden. You must not tie a knot. They believed they were protecting God's holiness. But without realizing it, they created a cruel paradox. Human beings were allowed to rest, but not allowed to have needs. You were allowed to keep still, but if your stomach was aching with hunger, you were not allowed to do anything to ease it. That legal system quietly sent a devastating message. Holiness does not tolerate physical fragility. To draw near to God, you must deny the most human parts of yourself, your hunger, your thirst, your exhaustion. And it is precisely within this suffocating atmosphere that Jesus and his disciples appear, footsteps through the field in the age of hunger. Now imagine the scene in Luke, chapter 6. It is a beautiful Sabbath day. Golden sunlight stretches across ripe wheat fields on the outskirts of the land. A gentle breeze moves through the stalks, creating soft waves of grain. The atmosphere is quiet, solemn. Everything feels as it should on a holy day. People are inside their homes or gathered in the synagogue, preserving sacred stillness. But on a narrow dirt path cutting through the field, a small group is walking. It is Jesus and his disciples. They are not nobles riding in chariots. They are travelers on foot, dust clinging to the hems of their garments, legs aching from long days of walking and teaching. And most importantly of all, they are hungry. Hunger. Have you ever felt real hunger? Not the casual craving for a snack, but the deep, gnawing hunger, the stomach tightening, the body growing weak, the head turning light. Hunger is the body's most honest voice. It reminds us that we are finite creatures, dependent on nourishment simply to live. The disciples were not holy beings beyond physical needs. They were strong men, worn down by exhaustion. And right in front of them stood a field of golden grain, a banquet laid out by nature itself. By the most natural instinct, the most human reflex, they reached out. They plucked a few heads of wheat along the path. They rubbed them gently between their rough palms to separate the husks, blew away the chaff, and put the raw kernels into their mouths. Just a few grains, a small handful, worth almost nothing. They carried no sickles to harvest, no sacks to store grain. They had no intention of stealing or damaging anyone's field. They were simply easing the hunger tormenting their bodies. The soft crunch of grain, perhaps a few quiet words exchanged among them, may have been the only sounds breaking the stillness of the field that day. A moment utterly ordinary, utterly human. But in the eyes of those watching from the shadows, it was a crime, when the law stands above life. From the shadows of the law, the Pharisees stepped forward. Or perhaps they had been following the group all along, their eyes scrutinizing every movement. A question cuts through the peaceful moment, sharp as a blade. Why are you doing what is not lawful on the Sabbath? Luke 6-2. Pause for a moment and reflect on that question. They do not ask, "Are you hungry?" They do not ask, "Have you been walking a long way? Are you tired?" They show no concern at all for the physical condition or the human needs of the people standing before them. In their eyes, the disciples are no longer flesh and blood human beings. They are merely objects of the law, and according to their rigid interpretation, the act of plucking heads of grain is classified as harvesting. The act of rubbing grain in the hands is labeled grinding. The act of blowing away the husks is condemned as winnowing. Do you see the cruelty hidden in this absurd logic? An action that takes only a few seconds, simply to put food into the mouth and keep the body alive, has been inflated into a full production process. The law has been twisted so severely that a basic act of survival is turned into a criminal offense. This is the tragedy of religion when love is absent. It sees rules, but is blind to people. It protects ritual correctness, while allowing human beings to wither in hunger and thirst. The Pharisees represent a frightening mindset, a mindset that values systems over life itself. They would rather see the disciples collapse from hunger than allow a single minor rule to be broken, a mirror held up to ourselves. This story took place in ancient Judea, but is it really so unfamiliar to us today? Listen closely to the voices of those Pharisees. Have you ever noticed that the same voices sometimes echo inside your own mind? Have there been moments when you were completely exhausted, longing to let go of everything and take a full day of rest, only to hear an inner voice say, "Why are you being so lazy? Other people are working. You haven't earned the right to rest yet." Have there been times when you were hurting, when you wanted to cry, to be vulnerable, yet you held yourself back? Be strong. Crying is weakness. Don't let anyone see how broken you are. These are the invisible Sabbath laws of the modern world. The law of productivity, the law of perfection, the law of strength. We build these fences around ourselves. We forbid ourselves to be hungry, hungry for rest, hungry for understanding, hungry for love. We force ourselves to function like tireless machines, afraid that if we stop, we'll break society's unspoken rules, afraid we'll be judged, left behind, discarded. We look at the small stalks of joy growing by the roadside, a late morning sleep, an afternoon of doing nothing, a quiet moment of staring into space, and we feel guilt. Why am I doing what I'm not supposed to do? Suddenly, the wheat field of Judea becomes a mirror reflecting our own souls. We are the hungry disciples, longing to be nourished, and at the same time, we are the harsh Pharisees, ruler in hand, constantly measuring our own worth, the silence of Jesus and the voice of life. Let's return to the story. When faced with that sharp accusation, What does Jesus do? He doesn't apologize. He doesn't appear confused. He doesn't argue over technical details of the law, whether picking a few heads of grain really counts as harvesting. He stands there, in the middle of the wide-open field, and looks straight at his accusers. There is no hatred in his eyes, only a deep compassion for their hardened hearts. He knows the issue is not the grain. The issue is the heart. He is about to give an answer that will shake the very foundations of their thinking. He will remind them of history, of King David, of the true nature of God. But before we get to that answer, which we will explore more deeply later, pause and stay with this image. Jesus allows his disciples to eat. This is the most important detail of part 1. He is the teacher. He is the spiritual guide. If plucking grain were truly sinful, if it were truly wrong, he would have stopped them immediately. But he doesn't. He lets them eat. That silent permission is itself a declaration. It says, human hunger is not a sin. It says, the need to live, to nourish the body, is a sacred need. Human beings are not just floating souls. We have bodies. God created the stomach just as surely as he created the heart. God created the need for sleep just as he created the need for prayer. A faith that denies the body, that denies human weakness, will eventually become violent, even when that violence is dressed in moral or religious language. Jesus stands on the side of life. He stands with those who are tired, those who are hungry inside and out. He values the life of a human being more than the flawless observance of a lifeless ritual. An invitation to lay down your burdens. My friend, the story of the wheat field on the Sabbath opens a door for you and me today. Perhaps you feel like those disciples walking through a long stretch of life, exhausted and hungry. Perhaps you are hungry for peace, hungry for a good night's sleep, hungry to be accepted just as you are, and perhaps around you, or even inside your own head, there are judging voices saying, don't stop, push harder, be perfect. But look carefully at where Jesus is in the picture of your life. He is walking with you. He is not standing on the side of those accusing voices. He sees your exhaustion, and he does not call it sin. He sees your limits, and he does not call them weakness. He sees that you need to be fed, to be nourished, to be rested. Today, try just once to lay down the harsh Sabbath law you've been imposing on yourself. Allow yourself to be an ordinary human being, allowed to be tired, allowed to stop, allowed to care for yourself without guilt. Imagine opening your hands, just like the disciples long ago, not to work, not to cling to achievements, but to receive the grains of grace, the rest that God is offering you right now. True holiness is not found in how well you carry your burdens. True holiness is found in daring to trust this truth. You are loved even at your weakest. Let that truth nourish your soul, just as the grains of wheat nourished the bodies of the disciples. Take a deep breath in and breathe out every burden. Peace be with you.